And I have to admit that while listening to Islands and suffering through Islands, I was thinking, can I do this? Do I want to really listen to all of these studio albums and rank them? Is this even going to be possible, or is this going to be a chore? And there was this feeling. I was kind of disheartened after Islands. And I mean, you were the one who pointed out, well, so was Robert.
Yeah.
That's exactly how he felt.
He was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
I don't know if I can do this anymore. And he knew that change had to happen. And for the first time, there was no King Crimson record in 1972. However, he spent 1972 rehearsing with a new band. And this would have been with John Wetton on bass, Dave Cross on violin and mellotron, and two percussionists, Bill Bruford on drums and Jamie Muir on percussion. At this time, John Wetton was a member of Family, and Bill Bruford was a member of Yes. And so there was something a little bit, behind the scenes about it, inner workings, schemes, conspiracies about the whole thing. I find it amusing that it had to be coordinated so that John Wetton and Bill Bruford both quit their respective bands at the exact same time. Because even then, the news traveled fast among the network of recording studios. But this was the birth of a whole new King Crimson. Are we going to call it King Crimson? We don't know. But obviously, it became King Crimson. The resulting album was their fifth, Larks, Tongues, and Aspic. And in my introduction to Islands, I had asked you, I said, the fourth album is usually where bands arrive. Well, this is where King Crimson arrive for me.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
The debut album is classic. It's one of a kind. If they had released one album and quit, I still think Court of the Crimson King would be legendary. But here's where King Crimson upped the ante for the first time, in my opinion. And this album is completely cinematic. Like I even think I said in my note, when it came time to listen to Larks, Tongues, and Aspic, I said, do I want to watch a movie tonight or listen to King Crimson? I realized, well, wait a minute. I can do both. I can listen to Larks, Tongues, and Aspic because it is cinema.
Yeah. It's
cinema for your ears.
I'm with you. Like, this is, I did the same thing you did. And Islands I was like, all right, I'm tired now a little bit too. And I put this on the next night, and the amount of times that I said, wow, well, listening to this is telling of how amazing this record is. Like, the first piece, Larks, Tongues Part 1, might be one of the most impressive tour de forces that Crimson has ever put on tape, or any band, really. It is a real masterpiece. It's unbelievable the amount of stuff that they're doing with just 13 minutes. It's crazy. It is like you said, so cinematic. I think this is a real masterpiece. Like, my notes say, holy shit, is this album amazing or not?
Is this album real?
It's night and day from Islands. Like, it's a massive change. Like, first of all, this is my favorite period of King Crimson. Like, this band is my favorite. It's really special for me. They were just lightning in a bottle. Amazing chemistry with these musicians. But man, this thing is so dynamic, this album. It's got, I think this is the birth of heavy metal also, but it also has these beautiful acoustic transcendent moments. Like, Book of Saturday is gorgeous. Exiles has moments that are like pure romantic, dripping romantic classical music.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. And, it's night and day, like I said, from Islands. Islands has some nice stuff, but it's really tired. This is full of life, and it's full of dynamism, and there's a drive behind this band. You can feel it and hear it. Much like the first album, In the Court, this has a drive to it that's almost unmatched anywhere else. Only found in the rare special King Crimson records. And I think this is one of those special King Crimson records.
It definitely is, yes. And I like what Fripp said, because basically when choosing the personnel for this album, he had auditioned Bill Bruford and auditioned Jamie Muir separately, and he realized, well, wait, Bill Bruford is way too straight for this group. He's way too solid. He's way too typical drummer. And then, but Jamie Muir is way too far out to be the drummer. And he makes a comment, something like, he realized one morning, wait a minute, I should combine them, because the strengths of one will make up for the weakness of the other, and vice versa. And I think that that's the defining characteristic of this album. And I think The Great Deceiver says something like Jamie Muir accounted for 60% of this band's presence at that time, because here he is, he's wearing furs and he's got blood capsules and fangs. Does he have fangs? I've never seen actual footage of it. We'll just say he has fangs.
like a tweedy little mustache going on too.
But but dude would climb up the stacks of amps or the PA system and crunch down on these blood capsules and have blood flowing from his mouth.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, in the liner notes, David Cross said they had no idea that he was going to do that and dance around stage. They went on stage and they were all half like trying to play music and half flabbergasted at what he's doing on stage. And it's so funny. It's hilarious.
It's like a Peter Gabriel puts on the dress and the fox mask. Moment. For all its eccentricity, for all of its cinematic nature and its peaks and valleys, its light moments, its darkness, its beauty, its horror, its terror.
Yeah.
There's some great music here. There's some really great music, and like you mentioned, I'm looking at the song titles and there aren't any. But you mentioned Exiles. Like, that's the only song on this one that, to my ear, could have been on Court or In the Wake of Poseidon. That could have been on any of the first four records, because it has that acoustic timbre, and there's even a little bit of flute. I think that's David Cross playing flute on that track. And I think when I mentioned earlier that you don't hear that timbre much, I think this might be one of the last times you really hear that acoustic guitar and flute timbre together. But like Easy Money is an incredible piece of music. And when people wax poetic about Sailor's Tale, I always have this one in the back of my mind, because this is Fripp as a soloist really stretching out in a way that maybe he hadn't since all the way back on the first record with 21st Century Schizoid Man. You really hear his soloing begin to stretch out in space, and it's almost like a Zappa type thing, or it's just like a slow groove with just a couple of chords, but it really allows for a lot of growth. And like you said, dynamism. Yeah.
He's an amazing soloist on this. Like this, you're right. Like, this is the point where his guitar playing, I think, really starts to become absolutely incredible. Like, and with that piece in particular too. Like this Crimson, when they played that live, it would be a show-stopping improvisation almost every night in the middle of Easy Money, and like Fripp unleashing, or like just the band playing together. Sometimes it would be not just a Fripp solo, it would be the band improvising, all four of them at the same time, doing something completely new. And it's always fire.
I think that the all-time classic on this album is Larks Songs and Aspic Part 2, which is, for me, that's the best King Crimson instrumental. Hands down.
It's quintessential Crimson.
The best all-time King Crimson instrumental. And there's a moment in this track where it just pares down to basically Fripp and John Wetton together. And what I see in my head is Boris Karloff's Frankenstein, just kind of lumbering, the da-dum, 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 da-da-dum, da-dum, the old monster movie visuals in my mind. And it's great. It's cinema. It's like I said, it's cinema.
It's cinema.
Not much more to say about this one other than this is the beginning of the gamelan influences, and it goes away pretty rapidly, and then it comes back.
Yes,
in a huge way later on down the road.
I think it's a masterpiece. Like I said before, this album is really amazing. Like, this is this band bursting into life. It just works so well as an album. This is how people should make albums. Like this is a
Yeah.
quintessential, the best produced albums of all time. This has got to be one of them for
And
sure.
the pacing of the tracks.
It's the pacing, it's the flow, it's the contrast and release, it's the power of the band, the strength of material. It's all here. The boxes are checked.
Following Larks, Tongues, and Aspic, Jamie Muir left. And as Robert says, this is not a man who could be in a group for very long because he's a very free thinker. He's very much into spiritual matters. And I think he went away and became a monk.
He did.
This is the first time this happens,
Yes.
that someone leaves King Crimson and becomes a monk for a while. But the album is Starless and Bible Black. And I think that this is the emergence of the flying brick wall.
After the advent of Larks, Tongues, the band went on the road, and the band essentially stayed on the road until it stopped. But while they were on the road, they were hurting for tunes. So Bruford, and a few other guys, most notably Bruford, was like, "Come on, we gotta get some tunes going here." So he kind of pushed Robert to really write. Robert went in and wrote a couple of tunes, and the band kind of collaborated on a couple things, most notably the showstopper Fracture. So they wrote a couple of tunes, but they were still missing stuff. And a few weeks before they went into the studio, they played a couple of professionally recorded concerts in Zurich and in Amsterdam, and also in the Apollo Theatre in Glasgow, UK. But they decided to use this King Crimson was doing something that, well, all the King Crimsons improvise, right? But this King Crimson was doing something special when they improvised. This is for me, there's two things this group does. They are, for me, the best quartet to play rock music or rock adjacent music. It isn't really rock, right? It's something different.
It's kind of like Miles Davis.
Yeah, exactly. It has it's
rock.
on that level of, musicians that are listening to each other and they're, playing off each other. They had this magic chemistry. I don't know what the heck or how to really describe it properly, but when they were on stage and they were improvising, they were listening and they were, creating something impressive every night that was completely different every night. Even with the songs they were playing, it's very evident when if you were to follow these guys, that they were playing the same songs, but they were playing them so different that it almost sounded like they had new material every single night. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Which leads me to two things. One is I have this box set, and which is the Starless set, which has really opened my eyes. I bought this a year ago, just about, and it's really been a year of diving into this material and falling back in love with the band King Crimson itself. This is a treasure trove, by the way. But especially the Amsterdam concert and a little bit from the other ones, they pulled some improvisations to fill out an album. More or less. And these improvisations are so cool and so unique that they are essentially songs and compositions, right? It's instant, like Frank Zappa viewed guitar soloing as instant composition. This is much of the same philosophy. So you get Starless and Bible Black, which is half in the studio, maybe a little less than half in the studio, and then the rest is recorded live material, which is improvised material.
I think only The Great Deceiver is a studio recording.
Lament
right?
is also.
And Lament is,
Yeah,
it's just the first two songs. And then there's overdubs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overdubs.
Yeah. So only the beginning of the Night Watch, I think, is in the studio, or it's the other way around. I forget which, because there was some sort of tape problem. And then Fracture was recorded live also, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, that's that's Amsterdam.
Yeah, that's Amsterdam.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the Night Watch CD.
Yeah, and Fracture is lauded by almost anyone who plays guitar as one of the most difficult pieces of music ever.
Yeah, Anthony Garone has made an entire YouTube channel and written a book from trying to play Fracture.
Last week he released a video. He's going to play Fracture live at a King Crimson based festival in Europe in September. Yeah.
Wonderful. Good for him.
More power to him. He's great. I really enjoy his content. But yeah, so Starless and Bible Black is an album. I really like it, right? But it's an album that really gets better and better every time I hear it. I tend to era of the band. I tend to gravitate now towards listening to live stuff more than the studio albums.
Sure.
But the albums are impressive as hell.
Yeah.
And this is no exception. I think the title track is one of the sickest things ever played on stage. It is amazing. It's just super cool. And it, if you didn't know any better, it would sound like it was a piece of music composed in the studio. Yeah. But they played it live on stage and then it was gone.
That's the evil King Crimson.
Yeah, it's villainous.
That's the evil side. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the pure menace. And then there's on the other side of the album, the first side, there's Trio, which is another improvisational piece, but it's essentially just violin and acoustic sounds. It's beautiful.
Bill Bruford chose not to play and received the writing credit for it.
Yeah, listen, it's a choice to not put, not to play is a choice. Yeah. He was right in this case. Drums wouldn't work here. It's gorgeous.
King Crimson has always been split evenly among the members of the band. So by giving Bill Bruford a writing credit, he's being paid publishing for this song he didn't play on. That's, to me, that's Robert's way of thanking him for decades.
Yes.
For his
Here
choices.
you go. The Night Watch is actually a real strong contender for my favorite King Crimson song.
It's up there.
Just absolutely love this piece of music. And every concert on this box set that I have, that I watched, for me is like completely mesmerizing. Like it's like what Exiles does in its romantic drippiness. It's about Rembrandt's The Night Watch. But which, by the way, I've seen in person. It's in Amsterdam. That painting is extraordinary because it is like, 20, 30 feet long. Like it covers a whole hallway. It's breathtaking. But this piece is just so beautiful. And then Fripp always plays a miraculously beautiful guitar solo. Like Fripp is really like I think his lyricism is always understated. He's an incredibly lyrical guitar player.
Oh, yeah.
And it shines here. And I love it to pieces. This is a good one, folks. I'm getting very objective, but that's okay.
I like how there's a story that John Wetton did not like Fripp's solo in The Night Watch. And Fripp was like, I think you should listen to it more carefully or something like really, like too bad, like response about it.
That's hilarious.
Because Robert's really proud of it, and so he should be. My feelings on this album have always been a little bit complicated because when I first heard it, I didn't get it, and I actually, if you want to talk about a strange duo, for Easter, back when I was gifted things for Easter, when I was like still in high school, I was gifted this album and Lizard at the same time. And I remember listening to Lizard all the way through, and I connected with it because we're both band kids, right? So horns and brass and that kind of stuff might be more easy for us to relate to than other rock music fans, potentially. So I related to Lizard really quickly, kind of as a flute player and being interested in symphonic and wind music. But I didn't really get the improvs at first. And I just remember falling asleep through the title track. And when Fripp comes on because that's double tracked when he comes in at the end of Fracture, with the double track guitars, I remember that scaring the lights out of me, and like I jolted awake. But that's still, when I listen to it, I find that such a powerful moment. And over the years, I have grown to really like this album, and I've grown to appreciate a lot of like the lyricism, like you said, of songs like The Night Watch. And one evening I sat down and listened to the Zurich concert from 1973 that's included here. And I liked that well enough that I bought the Great Deceiver box set, which I should show, but we're not talking about Great Deceiver. That came yesterday, so I'm still listening to it. So basically, this is a period of King Crimson that I'm still exploring and learning to appreciate. But I do really like it. I, however, would consider Starless and Bible Black to be my least favorite of the 70's trilogy. It's a great record, and it's one that's growing on me. And I will say that in the course of doing this ranking video, this one bumped up several notches. Because I listened to it in context, and then I went back and listened to it again, and I liked it even more. If I get a chance to, I'm going to buy the box set, because I would love to dig into these shows and hear more of what you're talking about.
Definitely need to. It covers almost the entire. Well, so I'll say two things. It covers almost the entire European tour around when this album came out and afterwards, and almost all of the concerts are in. They're called the blue tapes. They're like soundboard recordings essentially, and they're lauded for their sound quality, and they sound great. Almost all of our concerts here, except for the one bootleg concert, are amazing sound quality.
Yeah, I think they're multi-track. They are mostly multi-track recordings.
Yeah. So the first 6 discs, I think, are like straight off the soundboard, and the rest are multi-track recordings, and they're great multi-track recordings.
I would love to get my hands on a copy of that set at some point.
They sound amazing, folks. Like really amazing.
But I also have this feeling that they're eventually going to do a 50th anniversary edition of that. They did Larks, Tongues, and Aspic last year, and they already announced Red. I was hoping they would announce Starless this year.
It is the 50th this year.
Yeah, but it's the 50th of Red as well, and I think that Red is perhaps the better seller.
Yeah, I think it is too.
And that's
a good segue.
It's a good segue. So David Cross leaves, right?
Yeah. So what happens is the band finishes the Europe tour in early '74, like around March, and then they go to the U.S. and then they play throughout the States. And right towards the end of that tour, David Cross leaves. I think part of it is, the music is starting to get even heavier. Like this is really like where somewhere of the proto metal comes in. Wetton and Bruford really want to up the ante on the heaviness, and Cross.
That's the flying brick wall that I was talking about.
Yeah, you're right. That's
the rhythm section.
Where that comes back. The rhythm section, the flying brick wall, is really starting to push the envelope, which is amazing. But it's Cross.
It's drowning him out. It's drowning out Cross.
And Cross felt that his violin was being undershadowed, and he was essentially just a keyboard player. Well, which may or may not be true, but he decided to leave the band because of those reasons.
Well, Cross was hired mostly as a compliment to Jamie Muir,
right?
According to the Great Deceiver liner notes. So I guess with Jamie Muir out of the group, there was less space for violin, and Fripp's guitar is one of the things that was beginning to drown out the violin. Now I like what David Cross brings on keyboards. And there's a lot of his keyboard stuff that you hear on like the Nightwatch versions that aren't on the Starless and Bible Black albums.
His violin playing I think the difference comes in the America tour, really, because on the Starless shows, like Cross does have some killer violin moments, and there are several improvs that are kind of like Trio. Like it's just like a very quiet kind of moody thing, or like Cross will play a solo in Exiles or Larks Ones, and it's like amazing stuff, really.
Yeah. So you have King Crimson distilled to a trio of John Wetton, Bill Bruford, and Robert Fripp. But to augment this trio, we do have contributions from David Cross, of course. He appears on Providence. So you have a trio augmented by some familiar names.
Yeah.
Mel Collins, soprano saxophone, Ian McDonald, alto saxophone, Robin Miller, oboe, and Mark Cherrig, cornet. So I feel like there must have been something in the air that made Fripp realize that this band was on borrowed time. And I wonder if there was an attempt to tie together some of the early King Crimson influences, because Fripp left the music industry after this album for a while. And I think that it's possible he was thinking, well, this is the last King Crimson album. This is going to be the last one. So I do feel like there's like a tying together of the loose ends happening with this album. And, I really think that there is not a bad track on this album.
No.
And I could wax poetically about all of them, but there's nothing like Starless. Starless is In the Court of the Crimson King, up a couple notches. And I mean the title track of In the Court of the Crimson King. It's a dark and brooding multi-part epic that kind of encapsulates everything that King Crimson were about up until that point. And Steven Wilson says it's the ultimate progressive rock song, and who am I to disagree? I mean, I know that is King Crimson prog, is it not prog? That's a debate for the ages, but we can at least agree that they did have their moments, and that's definitely one of their progressive moments. But yeah, this is a great album, and it's one of my absolute favorite albums by anybody.
I've been re-listening to Crimson a lot the past year, but this is an album I haven't heard in a really long time. I don't know why, but I just have not heard Red in it's got to be 6+ years, believe it or not. But last week I spun it again for the first time, and I was pretty wowed. This is another album where this was my favorite record of all time at one point, which again speaks a lot about this album. It's amazing. It really is amazing. It's essentially a power trio for most of the album. And on paper, that could sound really thin, maybe, or you get tired of it. But this record is humongous. It's just this massive sound, and it hits you like a truck immediately with Red.
Yeah.
That's Red for me, again, is a song that I think works best on the album. I like Red as an instrumental, but I for some reason live it doesn't work as well for me. But on the studio, it's amazing. And I also love Fallen Angels, one of my favorite ballads in the catalog. One More Red Nightmare is a favorite of mine too. I absolutely adore that song. I remember when I saw Crimson for the second time in 2014, they played that, and I flipped out because I never thought I would hear that song live, let alone by King Crimson itself. That was a big shock. I love Providence also. I actually spun the album again the next night too. Providence really knocked me out. I think I'm ready for it. It's I always kind of liked Providence, but when I was younger, it kind of just went over my head a bit. But after listening to so much of this band improvising, Providence slaps. Providence is incredible. This, a little spoiler for my ranking, I probably would rate this higher than In the Court simply because the Providence improv is so damn hot compared to
Moonchild.
Moonchild improv, which is
it's naive.
It's naive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word I'd use.
Absolutely. That's a great word. It's a very naive improv. But Providence is really I like what you said about it. It's very Penderecki almost. It's really avant-garde classical music, but in a rock setting. And you get John Wetton's absolutely evil bass sound. His bass is gnarly. And I love that very much. And Starless too. It's funny, all the live versions, the lyrics were never figured out. After hearing so many live versions, it was so nice to hear the actual lyrics of this song, fully formed and proper. Wetton's not repeating the same verse over and over again, which is kind of all right, I get it. But, that's just because you hear it so much. Starless is a masterpiece of music. It's not really much to say it besides that. It's a bona fide masterpiece. Nothing else quite like Starless. It's a good capstone to what could have been all of King Crimson.